Welcome to the Roy Morgan Weekly Update. The first week of the Albanese government was a whirlwind, with the new Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, jetting off to Japan to meet the Quad. That was the day after he was sworn in, without even securing his parliamentary majority by then. As counting continues, the size of the election victory has narrowed, with the ALP now on 51.7, that's up 3.2% since the last federal election in 2019. The LNP are on 48.3, that's down 3.2% since 2019, on a two-party preferred basis, obviously. Roy Morgan polling over the last week shows support for the ALP has increased and is now sitting at 55 ALP to 45 for the LNP coalition. But the big mover this week was government confidence. That's where we ask people whether they think the country's going in the right direction or the wrong direction. Government confidence increased a massive 28.5 points to 111.5. Now 100 is neutral, so that means people are really feeling, more people thinking the country's going in the right direction than the wrong direction. In fact, 45.5% of Australians say the country's going in the right direction, only 34% say it's going in the wrong direction. But economic worries still persist, and the ANZ Roy Morgan Consumer Confidence Index was virtually unchanged at 90.7, well below the neutral at 100. The primary vote for both major parties fell this election, and the beneficiaries obviously were the Greens and Independents, both of these translating their increased support into more seats. Although support for other parties went up, there were no new seats for One Nation or Clive Palmer's United Australia Party. Now, if we look at this on a seat-by-seat basis, the ALP secured a narrow parliamentary majority just this week, with the party's victory in the inner-city Melbourne seat of Macnamara being confirmed. Josh Burns won the seat after a really close challenge from Greens candidate Steph Hodgins-May. Burns' victory gives the ALP 76 seats, and there are still 2 seats in doubt, Deakin in Victoria and Gilmore in New South Wales, that are close contests between the ALP and Liberal. If the ALP can win one more seat, they can name a speaker and still have a majority on the floor of Parliament. But there's also talk at the moment of Rebecca Sharkey or Andrew Wilkie might be named as speaker to secure the ALP majority on the floor. Nevertheless, the crossbench now has expanded to 16, over 10% of the lower house, after the Greens won 3 new seats, bringing them to 4, and the Independents won 7 new seats, bringing them to a total of 10. Now let's look at what really happened to the Morrison LNP coalition government. There were 3 big issues that sunk the Morrison government, and they failed to address any of them, despite ample warnings. The first is climate change. The Morrison government made only a weak commitment to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. They never articulated a clear and believable plan to get there, and the public simply didn't believe that the commitment was real. And the second issue that sunk the government was corruption, or the Corruption Commission, a core promise of the Morrison government at the 2019 federal election was legislating a federal crime and corruption commission. Last week, the federal election marked the end of the Morrison government, but there's still no federal crime and corruption commission. The third is women. The Morrison government consistently failed to listen to and address the concerns of women, and this was particularly highlighted following the allegations made by former staffer Brittany Higgins in early 2021. Support for the coalition among women dropped substantially after that and never really recovered. Morrison's attempt to rectify the gap and to listen to what women had to say just missed the mark really badly. This was highlighted by the role Grace Tame had played. He simply wasn't trusted on anything he had to say. And underlying all these issues was a really big issue of distrust. Special Roy Morgan research looking at trust and particularly distrust, showed that Prime Minister Scott Morrison was the most distrusted federal politician. His closest challengers for distrust were new opposition leader Peter Dutton and former National Party leader Barnaby Joyce. The distrust in Morrison and his senior colleagues never went away throughout the whole election campaign and ultimately played a big role in the coalition's defeat. Now the Teals. The three highlighted issues, the things that sunk Morrison, were central to the campaigns of several Teal Independent candidates around Australia that ended up winning 7 seats, including 6 new ones in Melbourne, Sydney and Perth. The 20-odd Teal Independents, who were all professional, or almost all professional and well-respected women, there were actually 3 men as well, hammered the government on its failures on climate change, the Corruption Commission and its respect and support for women, and they reaped the benefit. But more than that, this election was a real turning point. For more than a century, Australian elections have been characterised by major parties developing policies behind closed doors, then recruiting and pre-selecting the candidates who will best prosecute those policies to voters at electorate touchpoints. It's been what you might call supply-side politics. At last week's federal election, however, we witnessed the shattering of the supply-side orthodoxy. Intelligent, middle-class voters disappointed and disaffected with the Morrison government's inaction on the environment, its failure to enact a national integrity watchdog, and its apparent tin ear to the issues and the voices of women came together to chart a new path. The local groups developed alternative, more progressive policies, and individuals either volunteered or were invited to represent the local views. This was the birth of so-called Teal Independence, and we say the birth of demand-side politics. The support of women and progressive men for the Teal Independence appears set to herald the birth of a new political movement based on local decision-making, not centralised control. The backers of the Teal Independence are already looking to build on their excellent performance in the federal election to contest upcoming state elections in Victoria later this year and in New South Wales next year. Thank you for listening. I look forward to joining you next week when we'll have the latest economic data from Roy Morgan for May, and we'll have that to share with you. Thanks.